Hey guys, Will Hamilton here, bringing you this look at the David Ferrer, Andy Murray semifinal match at the Aussie Open. Now, I think this match is going to come down to one thing, and that is court positioning. And in particular, Andy Murray's court positioning. If David Ferrer can get Andy to drift back behind the baseline, the further back he gets, I think the better Ferrer's shot at winning this match. And the reason I say, let me sort of take a step back. I mentioned this in another video, but they asked Murray about his occasionally passive play, and what Murray said was, I actually don't really play that passively. My balls have a lot of weight behind them when I hit, and they press my opponents, but it has to do with where I'm positioned behind the baseline. If anything is my problem, and the reason it might seem like I play passively is because I get behind the baseline, then my opponents have more time to get to my shots, set up, and obviously hit competent replies. So when I'm up on the baseline, then I can really press my opponents with my groundies. So I think that is going to be a huge factor in this match, because Ferrer is a guy who doesn't have huge offense. He certainly is a counterpuncher and wins matches by moving the ball around the court, getting a lot of balls in play, and getting his opponents out of position so that he has open court to put the ball into. And Murray's a similar player in the sense that he's a counterpuncher and works the ball around and doesn't take these huge cuts like maybe a Soderling or a Del Potro. But he certainly has a lot of offense when he wants to. The serve's been great so far in the tournament. He can certainly hit big off both sides. So then what Ferrer needs to do is figure out, how do I get Murray behind the baseline? And what Murray said about his court positioning, he says, one of my problems, the sort of passive play problem, is I tend to drift back and then I don't move back forward to try and reestablish good vertical court positioning. So I think part of this sort of question depends on Murray. Is he going to be very cognizant about always trying to reestablish, move back forward? Sort of as a tangent, if you go back to last year's U.S. Open, they had Rafael Nadal in the commentators booth, and he said one of the things he's done over the last couple of years to be more offensive and a less defensive player is this forward transition. Always looking to move forward, move forward, move forward, because simply based on where you're hitting the ball, am I hitting it here or am I hitting it back here? I'm not sure if this is on camera, but you're simply just going to press your opponent more if you make contact earlier. So we'll see. That was an interesting point about Rafa. We'll see if Murray is able to stay forward. But how can Ferrer keep Murray behind the baseline and actually push him back? Well, first of all, he needs to serve at a high percentage. I think that's somewhat of a given. I'd say he needs to be around 70-ish% on his first serve, because Murray's got a very nice return, and Ferrer just needs to have that first strike off of the service return. Ferrer's not going to get as many free points off his serve as a Roddick or Soderling or so on, or even somebody like a Federer who's got a great first serve. So he needs to have a high percentage just so that Murray, so that he can take a cut at the first ball, and Murray is just simply going to drift back to give himself more time to handle that first ball that Ferrer's hitting. So I think that's very important. Second of all, Ferrer needs to return well and Ferrer's got one of the best returns on tour, even for a guy who's not very big. He gets his racket on a lot of balls, gets a lot of balls on play, sends a lot of balls back with interest. So needs to return well, so that first of all, you don't want Murray to just get a ton of free points off that first serve, but I think he needs to get a lot of first serves back in play, and then he needs to be aggressive off those second serves. And a play that worked well for Djokovic against Federer last night was the deep return down the middle of the court here, because a good thing about that play, speaking of court positioning, is when you serve, and particularly on the Pro Tour, let me actually erase this. The servers, obviously they start behind the, this marker's kind of going on me, so I'm going to change colors. Servers obviously start here, but when you obviously jump on the Pro Tour and you kind of land in the court a little bit. So if you return deep and you know, a decent amount of pace, but nothing too crazy down the middle, this is not an ideal returning position. Deep down the middle, you'd rather be further back so you can get out of the way and get set. So I think Ferrer should look for that return and see if that does some damage against Murray off the second serve, in particular. The first serve, that's obviously harder to do. So Ferrer needs to serve well, return well, so that he can sort of establish control off of that first ball. Now, let's say the rally is just sort of started. How can Ferrer push Murray back behind the baseline? And this is an interesting question because, you know, you could certainly argue that hitting hard down the middle of the court could be a good play if Murray has to back up to handle this ball. So you put a lot of pace on him and go down the middle of the court there. But the question is, you know, is that really can Ferrer really pull that off? And that's definitely a question mark. Again, Ferrer's not the biggest player, doesn't hit super hard. This tactic worked well for Federer against Del Potro back in 2009, the U.S. Open final, where Fed put a lot of balls down the middle of the court with some pace and pushed Del Potro back a little bit. You know, Del Potro's a bigger guy, he's 6'6", 6'7", so he had to get out of the way. And then obviously Del Potro won that match. Fed started going to the corners a little bit more, and Del Potro didn't have to get out of the way of the ball anymore. That was more into his wheelhouse, and he could set up better. So that was an example of how this tactic can work. I think Ferrer, he certainly should try this if some other stuff's not working. But I think Ferrer, you're going to see him try and move the ball around the court more. And if he can get Murray moving, then Murray, just as that natural tendency, might drift back as he gets to the corners. And if Ferrer can string together a series of effective shots, then Murray's not going to be able to move forward and reestablish. So that is my guess as to what Ferrer is going to try and do. Play his game and hope that Murray stays further behind the baseline and can't neutralize as well. And while Murray plays great defense, he's not, I think Djokovic's defense is a little bit more pressing in a way. Djokovic can hit a little bit bigger when he's stretched out. So I think this could be effective for Ferrer. I think if he can keep Murray moving and Murray's far behind the baseline and stretched out, Murray's not going to be able to neutralize as well off one shot. That's something Djokovic was able to do. There were instances against Federer where Djokovic was stretched out, maybe a rally like this. It could have been on the forehand side as well. And Djokovic just took one swing and kind of put it back here somewhere or into a corner with some pace on it, and then the rally's back neutral. So Murray, I don't think is going to be able to do that as well as Djokovic. So I think Ferrer's going to have some looks and have some opportunities in this match to use that strategy and be effective with it. So yeah, that's sort of the game plan for Ferrer is good first serve, quality return, and then he's got to move the ball around well, but keep Murray behind the baseline and pin him back there. Once you get him back there, you got to keep him back there. And if he does that, I think this could be an interesting match. Now, with that in mind, what do I think the score is going to be? How do I think this plays out? I'm going to go Murray in 4 sets. I think this is a tall ask for Ferrer, given the level that Murray is playing. He looked very, very good. He's obviously been beating folks pretty easily. He lost 1 set to, Dolgopolov is how I pronounced it before, but then somebody else said it was Dolgopolov, whatever. I'm obviously not very good with names, so I'll figure out how to pronounce it, and then next time I'll get it. But Murray lost that 1 set, but he's looked great just generally in this tournament. So I think Murray pulls this one out, and then that would obviously set up a Murray-Djokovic final, which I think would be a fascinating match. So I kind of have my fingers crossed for that one. I think that'd be a great final. So anyway, that's my call. 4 sets for Murray. Please let me know what you guys think about this. Comments below. There's also a like button. Please click on that. And yeah, this match starts in a couple hours, so we'll see how it plays out. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to reading your comments. See you guys soon.